So I was reading some figures. From worldhunger.org, there are about 800 million hungry kids, 2 billion micronutrient deficient, and 1.9 billion overweight and obese, and about 160 million under 5 stunted. On the flip side, overall, and these figures are from 2-3 years old, which means that if things have not improved, they're worse. Overall, 5.6 million children under age 5 died in 2016, which means an average 15,000 kids, they die every day due to hunger. I believe that inequality, poverty, and injustice are enablers of conflicts, wars, and issues across the world. And which is why I believe that the leaders and the private sector leadership decided to come up with a framework, which is United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, to come up with a policy and a framework where all these issues can be addressed and fixed. I believe that in the form of SDGs, there is a solution that exists which can solve everything. We have the solution, we have the guidelines, we have the tools. What's missing is the political and the personal will. I think when you have everything and things don't improve, it all boils down to the will to action on them. Welcome to Bond Space Station. This is Reyes signing in from Johannesburg, South Africa. Today, we are having even a much higher diverse, incredible list of guests. So it's more of a time travel. We have Adam joining us across the Atlantic, which is about, I think, 13 to 14 hours flight from South Africa. Then we have two brilliant ladies joining us from France. So now we have Europe, US, and Africa connected. And I think it's pure magic when in biblical times when we used to talk about magicians and wizards, and when they were able to, speak to or fly off to someone, on the other end of the world. So I'm going to give a bit brief of the kind of incredible people I have on the session today. And I am really overwhelmed and impressed by such senior people we're going to have on our session today. So we have a very senior professor of technology with the Chevalier of the Legion of Honor from France, very senior, experienced in smart governance, education, and ICT. Then we have a senior fellow of Open Diplomacy Institute. She works on bridging between ecology and technology, over 15 years of experience in French listed tech and industrial companies. And then we have a very senior veteran of United Nations, 25 years, a lifelong committed environmentalist, a global advocate of SDGs, an avid writer and traveler on climate and wildlife. So without further ado, I would request one by one my honorable guests to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about themselves, and then after that we're gonna straight dive in and get on with the business of discussing SDGs. So bonjour Sylviane, please if you can introduce yourself and give a brief background to our audience.
Okay, bonjour Rez from Paris, beautiful weather. And so I am partner and founder of a company called Items International, who is specialized in strategic digital consulting. But as professor of Paris University, I have been co-founder and animated the Institute of European Studies. I believe a lot in Europe, if it's not right now the political correct always to say it. I work on international research and consulting on the digital society in general, but on public policy, on economic issues, on strategy, international strategy for new projects. I am also a president and founder of a think tank called Global Forum, which it's an international think tank that has been held for 28 years and bringing together all the digital society together with the different sectors. Voilà, more or less. And I have also created, because I believe in education, an association called ENSA, European Education New Society Association, to help young people. And my experience is in digital, in economy, in smart cities, and in human in general. Voilà.
Thank you so much. Adam, I would request you to give a brief about yourself and your background, please.
Myself, I was born in Africa. Ah, you, sorry.
No,
Adam?
I think it's fascinating. Okay, since we're talking about Africa, I would mention that, and we'd like to hear more about that, Sylvain. My exposure to the realities of the world in the area of poverty and development and the environment began in the early 80s, 1982, when I left my home in Alaska and Yukon territories, and I took off walking east with a backpack, attempting to explore the world. And I kept going east until I ended up back in the West. Went to 50 countries on a budget of less than $100 a month, starting in Senegal, so the country where Sylvain was born. I was there, I reached Senegal on a one-way ticket without enough money to return to North America, and without knowing anyone in the city, the country, or the entire continent in February 1983. I returned 5 years later after having explored the entire continent of Africa, the Middle East, across Asia, 50 countries with very little money. And I returned, got my undergraduate degree, but then I helped create a magazine in Los Angeles several years later with the musician Lenny Kravitz and his wife Lisa Bonet, together with Lindsay Wagner and Kenny Loggins and John Denver, a lot of musicians. It was based in Hollywood. It was called Earth News. On behalf of that magazine, I went to the Earth Summit in 1992. That's when my global consciousness, when I got connected with the UN, I wrote a book about that summit called A Planetary Reckoning, the Earth Summit. And so that things kind of one led to the other. I ended up creating a global network with a Venezuelan philanthropist, creating internet companies, etc. Got into writing more books. I joined the UN in 1996. Actually, my first consulting was UNEP, UN Environment Program. I wrote a book for them called Taking Action, an environmental guide for you and your community, where I localized Agenda 21, and I'll talk about that if we're interested when we discuss the background for the SDGs. So things, like in life, they go on and on. Joined the UN, 22 years as a staff. I retired early, but then they pulled me back in, right when I thought I was off on my own writing more books. And currently I'm working with the UN Development Program again in Ukraine, supporting their COVID-19 response and communication outreach. So there you have it, the brief extension from your very kind introduction, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Adam. Bonjour, Nolwenn. Ça va?
Bonjour, oui, ça va. So we start to explain who I am. Is that the question?
Yes, that's the first question.
Okay.
Please tell our audience about yourself.
Okay, so very happy first to be with you and with that audience and to speak about these 4 SDGs. So who I am. So me, I am a woman in tech since more than 15 years now. I have a double background, so I did electrical engineering and then I go to business school. And I start my career in data center market, and then I was in different markets, retail, transport, e-mobility, very different, diverse posts and jobs, so in sales, in marketing, and strategy in a listed company. And then I do a jump after 20 years, something like that, because I want to discover how we learn. So I did a university diploma in France with amazing people where I learned to learn. And where now I know exactly how we can do a serious game and to help people to learn, because it is all thing around the future of work and how we work tomorrow. So, and now where I am in a French company, ACME, which is a very amazing, and I am in charge to help salespeople to be more effective. So that it is who I am. It is my professional life, but in my personal life, I'm very engaged in different associations, local associations around sustainability, around zero waste, around gender equity, but also international NGO. So I am in different networks, so at different levels. So I try to do a bridge between the global approach and the local approach, and in this way to move and to help people to be who they are.
Oh, voila, thank you so much. Okay, I want to first start with Adam, with permission from the ladies. The reason is I want our audience to understand from the original background of what SDGs are, because I know people read a lot about all the PR and the marketing stuff, the flashy circle, which has a lot of colors and 17 numbers of various goals and objectives. But audience would like to understand the basics. What are, it's the words sound really flashy, sustainable development goals, and they sound very posh as well. But end of the day, they are a very serious set of endeavors and objectives which are designed to make the world more balanced and equal. So Adam, I would like to request you to give a bird's eye view and a background on the actual, what is SDG, the journey, or basically the birth and the journey and what's happening so far.
Yeah, I'll try to wrap this up in just a few minutes for you. It's a big topic. I personally have a lot of passion for the Sustainable Development Goals because I've sort of been along the journey for a while, since the late 80s, since the early 1990s. But let me put it kind of into context, which will help you understand the importance and the relevance of the goals as they are. The global goals, the SDGs, what we call the Sustainable Development Goals, or also Agenda 2030. We have to go way back. Let's go back to 1961. Europe was decolonizing, pulling out of a lot of its former colonies, realizing kind of a lot of the poverty that was going on in the world at that time. And so through the United Nations, which was really gaining momentum in the early 1960s, they launched what was called the Development Decade. It was launched in January 1961 by John F. Kennedy. And the idea was to reduce poverty within 10 years. Then we'll go back to 1961, it was very optimistic. Although some progress was made, probably the approach was flawed in that it was very top down, where the mostly European or the developed, allies of the Second World War primarily, but joined with others, was that we know best, we've developed, and we'll come down with all our money and we'll solve the problems for you. It didn't work so well in the 60s, so they extended to 1970s. Now in 1970s, when 1972, the first big world conference took place in Sweden, hosted by Gro Harlem Brundtland. If you excuse me, you'll see I'm in a car driven by my son. I'm not driving myself, although I'm sitting on the right side on my way to Washington, D.C., which is about 2 hours that way. So now in 1972, we had Gro Harlem Brundtland hosted a very important conference on the Stockholm Summit on the Environment and Development, where we started linking poverty with the environment, that we need to solve poverty first, or in addition to safeguarding the environment, because you can't expect poor people who are struggling to survive not to cut down their forests, for example, if they need fuel to cook. So we had in 1972 the historic United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, which took place in Sweden, and that had actually 26 essential principles. We're down to 17 goals now, but let's look at, I won't go over all of them, but we're talking 1972. So we went through the 70s, and all of those, they weren't quite achieved, so we extended the development decade a third time into the 80s. We went through the 80s again. It was still that top-down primarily, right? This top-down where we know best, and they kept tweaking it, but it was still the top-down thing. We got into the 90s. Okay, through the 80s, the 90s, we started reevaluating, and we decided I mean, the United Nations and its framework and wisdom, and by collaborating with other countries, the biggest conference at the time on the issue took place in Rio de Janeiro, 1992, the Earth Summit, also called the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. The topic of my first book when I was there in 1992 on behalf of Earth News was called The Earth Summit, A Planetary Reckoning, because it was the biggest conference ever to take place with heads of state, from Bush to Castro, everybody was there. So out of the Earth Summit, they formulated Agenda 21, which is very similar to the SDGs and actually provided the framework. For the first time in a big conference, they invited civil society. Now this is where things started to change. Civil society, NGOs, action groups, indigenous groups, elderly, youth, all the sectors of society were invited to participate. That's when things started to change. We had the Rio Declaration and Agenda 21, and we started formulating local Agenda 21s in every country. So national governments started getting involved, right? And that's what important element came from the top down to every country from Sri Lanka to Sierra Leone. Were involved in formulating these local Agenda 21s and coming up with local action plans. Unfortunately, we had even the Commission on Sustainable Development that was meeting every year in New York under the Department of Economic and Social Affairs started to lose steam a little bit. So through the 90s, we came up with, I had my timer, I think I finished it, I'm getting with my 4 minutes. But from there, okay, from the 90s and Agenda 21, we had the Millennium Development Goals. Right toward the end of the millennium, they thought, "Oh my God, we're running out of 1,000 years. Let's come up with another plan." So we came up with these 7, Millennium Development Goals, most of which were achieved, primarily because China had reorganized a bit, the state-owned enterprises and all of that. It became kind of manufacturing for all of our, stuff around the world we don't really need. But China was manufacturing our Happy Meal toys, the plastics. But it helped the Chinese people lift out of poverty a lot. We had a goal in there about getting all the kids in school, universal primary education, which wasn't achieved. A lot of it was achieved. We had a goal in there, reduce poverty by 50% of extreme poverty by the year 2000 baseline by the year 2050. That was achieved. So we got to the year 2015, achieving 80–90%, and then we came up with another. The UN came together with a Sustainable Development Goals framework, and the primary difference there was we applied sort of a business strategy thinking of targets and timetables. 169 targets, which are you read through the 17 SDGs. They're interesting and they're inspiring, but the real meat and the substance of them are found in the 169 targets. You get in there and you can see where we have targets and timetables. We have measuring the foundation and milestones that we need to keep meeting on the way to 2030. We're slipping behind. Actually, quite frankly, we're not going to make it at the current rate, especially with this pandemic. If we had achieved the SDGs 10 years ago, there would not have been a pandemic, in my opinion. But we need to refocus and we need to regroup. And there now is more important than ever. We need to find ways. The Secretary General in December, just before the pandemic got really bad, announced a decade for action. It's 2020. We have 10 years. We need to get serious about achieving these SDGs. It's not a zero-sum game. Some people with the haves, they're afraid of getting serious because they don't want the have-nots to take away the haves. But there's enough for everybody, and to have shared prosperity with no one left behind, we need to get serious about these SDGs and find a way to achieve them everywhere for everyone. I hope that was. I hope I didn't speak too fast, and I hope riding through this countryside wasn't too distracting. But there you go, the Sustainable Development Goals. You can tell I have them in my blood. I'm very passionate about them. Over to you, Rez.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Adam. I think it was really profound and very precise for the audience. And actually, we are loving. We are getting sort of a virtual travel experience with you, like a joyride.
Here we go.
I like it.
State of
I
Maine.
like it. I'll come to Sylvian. Sylvian, you are one of our very senior industry leaders, and you have been all over the world, and you have been involved in child welfare, technology, smart governance, e-governance, sustainable and supported projects in Africa, smart cities in Europe. So why the global forum? And tell us what you've been doing in past 2 to 3 decades, which relates to the social uplift, equality, which basically is directly proportional to the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, when I created the Global Forum 28 years ago, there were no forum at that time. There was the UN, of course, Adam, but this is more than a forum. And that will put together a lot of different people from different sectors, public and private, governments, regulators, telecom people, software, hardware, media, but also application, healthcare, on digital, of course, healthcare, agriculture, all the different issues. So I thought that it was important to put together a think tank. It's small. It's we have more or less 300 people because we don't want more, because like that people can really network. They're all people who are strategic and have strategic issues, and they represent business, policy, education, and you have of the digital society. It's not only the digital economy, it's the digital society in general, and what are the benefits of the digital if we use them properly, because of course it can be used not properly. And voila. So it's a great opportunity to network through people who are never able to network together because they are too busy and they are in their own jobs. For example, the people working with planes, they are only in their field. People working with IoT, they work on IoT and so on. So we put everyone together to try to change and to develop innovative solutions. Maybe a lot of solution came out from the Global Forum. For example, Airbus, which is very known, I suppose, for everyone, like Boeing or whatever, found a solution for the platform for an issue that they needed from an agricultural company who was working on breeding and agriculture, and they have so many data to use that their data could be that platform could be developed with Airbus. They will never have thought of going to an agricultural company to develop something for Airbus. So we favorize partnership, and we try to stimulate as we have very short partners, very quick, like pitches, in order that people can identify what each one is doing and can go, and we have a lot of breaks and a lot of very nice dinners and lunches in theaters and so on, in order to have a cool atmosphere and that people can know each other much better. And so each year there are a lot of partners and new programs who come out and new ideas and people who will never thought to bring together. Of course, it is international. We have more than 40 countries which are represented, and we want it to be in the same time nice, cool, fun, but very serious. Voilà.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Nolwenn, I'll come to you with a bit of a difficult question. I see you've been all over. You are very active in a lot of areas related to technology, and also arts and sustainable tech. You've been involved in Open Diplomacy Institute, and also I noticed that you have that mindset of amalgamation of art and science. So you also relate to ecology and technology. So tell me that how explain that you said you work in technological and sustainable networks. So how that relates to SDGs, your work and your efforts and your different endeavors that you are doing.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, how?
Could you repeat, please, for Sylviane?
Yeah, Sylviane, I was asking Nolwenn that she's been involved in a lot of areas. She's very busy, very engaged. There's a lot of activity around ecology and technology and sustainable tech around various sectors. So, and she also talks about ecology and technology, amalgamation. So I wanted our audience to know from her perspective that how her work and various projects she's doing relates well to sustainable development goals and where she is heading.
Okay, so thank you, Riz. I will try to do the best I can, So it's true, I'm completely passionate about ecology and technology. It's not a technology in one way and ecology in another way. For me, both are completely connected. So I will give you some example and I will base on our SDG, the 4 SDG of this night. And try to explain you that ecology and technology can be together and can do something for our planet, for humanity, and to reduce the poverty and to empower people. So, for example, I will take the SDG 13, the climate change. People forgot that in 19th century, how we produce electricity. Many people think, oh, we do that. No. To produce electricity in 18th century, so we purchase waste and we use their fatness to produce electricity and also for cooking. So, however, because we chase them a lot, there's a less and less and less waste. So we decided to find another way to produce electricity. So because it becomes very rarifications of these animals, so we find a new way to do and produce electricity. And the guy, there's a very amazing guy in the 19th century. The name is Reynolds. So Reynolds, 50 years after this situation, he was very passionate about herbite. And he realized that animals, these animals, what is very magic with them is not their fatness, not that, it is they produce electricity only with calcium, sodium, and potassium. So he realized, okay, we can produce electricity with chemicals and we can produce electricity with our own body. So he did many research with dolphin, with iguana from Galapagos. He checked something like 200 species because he's very passionate. So he pursued his dream, and after that, what he developed, so he developed the first nano pacemaker. So it is his passion who creates the first nano pacemaker. So everybody now knows what is a pacemaker, but we forgot that at the beginning, it is a guy who checks the nature, he looks at the nature and to create something new. So that for me is very amazing. And what it's happened also with his research, it is, I don't know if you know this patch, the name it is Coral patch. So what is a coral patch? Coral patch, it is a patch you put on your skin, okay? You put on your skin and this patch can measure your temperature and your blood pressure wireless, okay? And also without battery. So when we talk about technology and what would be the future, we should consider that, okay, we can create something if we check the nature and we look at the nature. And also we do innovations because we change our mindset and our visions. So electricity, remind you, 200 years ago, it was produced with waves. So that it is just amazing for me. And I'll take another example because today, this night, we should discuss about gender equity. And you know that I am a really passionate woman about gender equity, and I'm very convinced that it's not my chromosome who should define my pay and should define my knowledge and my competencies, and that it is something very important for me. Many people who are in tech, we know so many women, especially two of them, Ada Lovelace. So if people don't know Ada Lovelace, it is a mother of computing. So another great woman in tech, it is Hedi Lamar. So Hedi Lamar, it is a mother of Wi-Fi. So when we discuss about tech sector and we compare that, the tech sector is not for women, it's not true. I'm very sorry to say that, but without women like Ada Lovelace and Hedi Lamar, we never possible to discuss this night and to have this discussion about SDG. But you know, today in 2020, I am very sad. I am sad because there's few Nobel Prize who are being given to women. 3 on physics, 5 on chemicals, 12 on medicines. It's not acceptable to have some women invisible. And if you take in mathematics area, for example, the Fields medals, only one woman, we give the Fields medals to one woman in 2014 only. Oh God, it's not possible. We're exactly the same. So it is a Maria Zicari. I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to explain her name. But you know, what I would like to highlight this night also, because there's so many women in the past who do so many things for us, and to have the possibility today to work and to have these conversations. And we'll share with you 3 of them, which I really like personally. The first, it is Nettie Stevens. Very few people know Nettie Stevens. Who is Nettie Stevens? It is a person who discovered that our gender is linked to our chromosome. So the XY and XX, it was discovered by a woman, Nettie Stevens. It is very amazing. It was in the 1913. So 100 years ago only. So if we are not a woman, we never discover that the gender is linked to our chromosome. So that it is something I would like to highlight. The second woman for me was very impressive and I really like, it is Émilie du Châtelet. So Émilie du Châtelet was a really lady completely free. She didn't care about people and critics and something like that. She's got 3 children, she's been married, and she was an amazing lady mathematic who loved mathematics. These ladies in 1737, okay? So imagine 1737, she writes a book, and the book is to explain and to visualize the Newton philosophy and the Newton approach. So if you want to do some research about that, the name of this book, it is Dissertations on Nature and Fire Propagations. That is just amazing. You know, even many people know Newton, okay? Many of us, we know Newton. Not many of us know what it is exactly Newton did, but that is another question. But very few people know that there's some woman in our history who developed and explain and vigorize what is Newton approach. And that for me, we have to highlight. And the last woman I would like to highlight is just amazing. It was not so far away now. It is Henrietta Lacks. So Henrietta Lacks, it is an amazing lady, an African-American lady, and she has a cancer, you know. And some people, they discovered that the progressions of her cancer was so amazing and so strange. So we take some cells from her, and with that, what we do, so we develop and we replicate the cells. And now, thanks this lady, we have the genetical therapy. So without a woman, and she's a black, because sometimes people imagine innovation, it is linked to our color. No, sorry, there's no color when we discuss about innovations. There's nothing, we are all equal. So that for me, it is just amazing lady. And if you want to understand her life, there's a beautiful movie. And this movie, it is the Immortal Life on Henrietta Lacks. So if you are in the medicine area, you know exactly what is Ella cellus. Ella cellus means Henrietta Lacks cellus. And to finish with the two other SDGs for this night, it is SDGs 10, reduce inequalities. And Adam, I completely agree with you. There's only one decade for action now. We have to change in order to be on action. You know, we are all of us human. Yes, there's a woman, there is man, there's animals, there's diverse. Okay, but there's only one planet. And for me, one planet, but there's more or less 8 million brains. I'm sorry, but with 8 million brains, we can make the difference. We can find the solutions. It's not impossible to change the world. We can do something. And one thing I really like, and we discussed with that with a few days ago, we said all for one and one for all. And for me, that is very important. It's exactly what we have to do. Tech for planet, tech for peace. And I finish with peace, SDG 17. So many people imagine tech sector, it is high-tech sector. All the time we think about smartphone, we discuss about 5G, we discuss about artificial intelligence, we discuss about so many things. Great. I love tech, to be fair. But if I take one example, our smartphone disrupt our communication. Our smartphone disrupts so many things in tech, in business, in many things. However, in your mobile, there is more than 40 rare metals. Rare metals is today a huge challenge for us because, you know, to produce our battery in our smartphone, you need cobalt and you need lithium. But cobalt and lithium, there's not plenty cobalt and lithium. It's not possible to go in your garden and to find cobalt and lithium, you know. So cobalt, for example, we have many cobalt and the production, it is Congo, the Republic of Congo, and 64% of the production of cobalt, it is in Congo. However, what is happening in Congo? Do you want to discuss about that? It's not very funny. It's not very green. There's some military dangers and there's some children who work in this area. And in lithium, it is more or less the same. And one other thing we forgot many times about tech, we talk about the rare earth metals. Rare earth metals, there's everywhere. So you have to know that 95% of rare earth metals are in China. So tension between USA with China is not only between Trump and Xi Jinping, it's also linked to the access of these rare metals. So there's plenty geopolitical aspects around technology also, and many tensions. That's why I'm very happy for this night because there are people from Africa, from US, from Europe, and you and all of us who have some friends in Latin America and in the Asia area. So I'm very happy about that. But what I would like to highlight about tech, it's not mandatory to do high tech. You know, there is so many solutions in low tech. So low tech, it is for me a good balance between protect our planet and develop technology and innovate. And there's two people personally I really appreciate in low tech approach. It is Philippe Billoux. It is a French engineer. He did a lot of things to promote low tech and to explain what it is exactly low tech. It's just an amazing guy. And another is an amazing guy, which is a long time now, I know him. It is Gunther Pauli. Gunther Pauli in sustainable area, it is considered like the Steve Jobs of sustainability. So Gunther Pauli has a global approach. He defines his vision, the blue economy. And personally, each day, I try to do the link between technology and ecology. And this is what I try to do all the time. It can be hard sometimes. It can be difficult, it's true. But you know, I think it is with our diverse profile and with our diversity, we can make the difference and achieve SDG in 10 years.
Wow, thank you so much, Nolwenn. That was really profound and very detailed and precise. And I love the way you talked about and focused about, you know, one of the key factors in overall balance of the societies is inclusion and equality. So I think when there is inequality and injustices, so that creates major part of the imbalances in society, and that is directly relates to one of the few key sustainable development goals. So, for example, if you fix the poverty and inequality, that has a ripple effect of fixing all other issues. Because if people are fed and the children are not hungry and they're educated and women are not suppressed, half of your problems are gone. So, Sylvian, I'll come to you with a very difficult and a long question, but first I want to go to Adam for a special question. So, Adam, I personally know that you are very, very passionate about environment, humanity, and also the inclusion part with regards to tech and the sustainable development goals. And you have traveled across the world. You have seen societies. You have seen different cultures, and also you are very passionate about animals. Because we live on the same planet, and if we don't take care of the animals, that disturbs the ecosystem of the planet. And I also remember, last time Adam was very kind. We were having a discussion. The best thing I like about Adam is that even if he's jogging, he'll take my call, and we can discuss something. And Adam actually explained a very interesting fact about which Nolwenn, you also mentioned when we were talking about race and color. So Adam, please don't forget to mention that thing when we talked about the evolution or the history of the human mankind, where it came from, where it evolved, how it spread across the world. So with regards to your passion on the environment in relation with the animals and the equality poverty part, please give us some background on that.
Touch briefly on when we talk about the animals. My last book is called The No Mammal Manifesto, and I look at mammals as a discussion. The industrial production and consumption of mammals that's destroying our health, is destroying the planet. And they're looking at cows and pigs and lambs. And so I advocate through this book 4 reasons to reduce or eliminate our consumption of mammals. First and foremost, emotional, because we are mammals. And I believe that eating within the mammal family is a little bit like cannibalism, and that the consumption of that for our own cholesterol and blood, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, the rest of it is very harmful. The industrial production of mammals is destroying the ecosystem. We're producing so much corn and agricultural products to feed to the cows, to feed to the humans. The ratio is way off. The Amazon's on fire because Brazil's biggest export is beef, and it's shipping it to China. China's the biggest client for Brazil. So it's cutting down Amazon rainforest to grow crops to feed the cows. We cut up the cows to freeze them and ship them off to China. So the ratio is way off, and it's not sustainable. And so to live in harmony with our environments, I advocate for reducing. If we want to eat meat, we can choose what we want to eat. We're omnivores. We can choose to eat like a fish or a chicken or turkey. There are plenty of animals we could eat that don't include mammals. So just the discussion around mammals. You touched on just looking at races in the world, and living here in the U.S. with Black Lives Matter, and the education that's needed. The conflict between races that's happening around the world is absurd in the sense that all non-Africans left Africa only 75,000 years ago, and that 75,000 years ago there were 70 Africans sailed across or paddled across from Eritrea to Yemen, started populating tracts of land, over-exploiting, moving on, arrived in Australia probably 45,000 years ago, Europe only 35,000 years ago. When Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, they found Neanderthal, which were like an earlier migration, and we were able to mix, just recently with their scientific evidence, to mix a little bit with Neanderthal, who came from Africa. 35,000, between 30 and 35,000 years ago, we crossed over the Bering Straits, colonized the Americas, and Madagascar only 2,000 years ago was colonized from Indonesia. But they're all Africans. We're all Africans. The lighter skinned ones, when we arrived in places where we did not need the melanin, from the sun, were cooler temperatures, maybe a bunch of albinos broke off from the main group of people and got lighter skin. But for whatever reason, people have different tones of skin and different characteristics, but they mean nothing. If you take the DNA sample from an Englishman, a Chinese, and an Aboriginal Australian, their DNA is identical. You can hardly tell it apart, but the external characteristics are different. But you take two Tanzanians who live across the street from each other, their DNA is so much different. Or two Nigerians, or a Beninois with a Senegalese, you know, their DNA is so different, vastly different than between an Aboriginal Australia, Chinese, and an Englishman. Why? Because Homo sapiens sapiens have been mixing it up in Africa for 2.4 million years. But us Africa diaspora, you know, those who left Africa before the waves with slavery and all of that, they came later. But the earlier ones that left from 70,000 years ago and became the Europeans, the Chinese, those Africans, we're only out for, you know, for 75,000 years. And that's not enough for the DNA to change that much. It changes a little bit. So what you see on the surface of the skin is just superficial. Another thing I wanted to touch on was what Nolene, this is very important. To achieve the SDGs is going to take a lot of innovation. It's going to take new technologies, new approaches, new ways of thinking. And for that, we need everybody on board, especially women. Holding back half of humanity is holding us all back. It's holding back all of humanity by holding back half of humanity. And the fact that Nolene has to pick and choose a few, you know, exemplary women who've achieved great things, you know, it's a bit sad because, you know, these ones that aren't known, one, we need more women examples to inspire other young women. STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you know, studies show that in high school levels, equally men and women are interested, boys and girls. But when you get to university, the percentage drops down to something like a third or a quarter women and the rest are men. We need to find out why. Especially because, and I hate to say this, Riz, women are smarter than us in some ways. You know, men have, women's brains and men's brains are very different. Women can multitask.
No, you're right, Adam.
You know,
Adam, one second. I really want to say something. No, I 200% agree with you. In my last session, actually, I was telling all the ladies and other participants, in my personal and professional experience, I have found women to be more responsible and more sharp. In my high school, in my college, in my university, all my maths and science teachers were women.
But look at this, Riz. When you dissect a woman's brain and you dissect a man's brain, two things. If you dissect it, if you scan a man's brain when he's thinking, and let's look at the scanning first. When you scan a man's brain when he's thinking, right, you pick up on where the activity is taking place. It's concentrated in one area or another. We're either left brain, frontal lobe, right brain, whatever it is. You scan a woman's brain, the whole thing's on fire. Women use their brains, you know, the whole brain. And the reason for that is the neural connectors between the left and right hemispheres, and the neural connectors between the two lobes and the subcortex, you know, where the subconscious takes place. They're connected. The whole brain's connected. Whereas men, we're not so connected, our brains. And for that reason alone, it shows that men, and here's the amazing thing. Women think differently than men, and each of us on our own can think, but when we're together, our weaknesses and strengths form a whole that's not 1 and 1, it's like 11. We're stronger together than we are apart even. But if we're going to hold back half of humanity, it's better to hold the men back. The women holding back has impeded progress of humanity for thousands of years. Now look at the difference. Studies have shown, and you can get 100 books on this. It shows that the reason for the difference is that from the hunting and gathering, for millennia, humanity was hunting and gathering, right? Men were out there with their spears, holding their spears, running around trying to stick it in something. You know, they're hunting. But 9 times out of 10, they came back with nothing. Women were the gatherers. Now, when you're gathering, you have to remember all the different types of plants. You have to be able to scan the horizon. You have to multitask. Men, they don't multitask so well. They grab their spear, they focus, and they stick a spear in something, right? We're still running around with our spears in our hands. But women, their brains evolved a little bit differently. Now, but together, you need the focus, but you need that multitasking. That's why parliament should be 50-50. Executive boards, corporate boards working together with women and men are much more successful and can relate with the market. You know, you can innovate. So when we're going to innovate solutions to the SDGs, we need women and men working together and listening to each other. You know, we need to break down these barriers. We need to connect and collaborate. And then who knows, time travel, exploring the cosmos, you know, solutions to poverty, to AIDS, to Corona. Imagine all the challenges we can overcome if we get all that brain power together, working together, and not like you're saying the thousands of children who are dying every day, and that's not including the malnourished ones who can't nourish their brains enough with enough food to be able to innovate. When everybody has enough to eat, and the challenges of just struggling to survive, imagine with all those minds that are freed and can innovate through and can collaborate through technology. This is where, in some ways the smartphones and all this can distract people and hold people, but think of all these minds finding ways to connect with others, to innovate and come up with ideas like we are now with France, Europe, in South Africa. Here I am, my son found a cell phone tower I could park under, so I have 5G, but that we can communicate and connect women and men together. And then the SDGs, that's like the first step. Imagine how far we can go as a species through science and technology into the future. Or we don't make it and we fall back into the dark ages, back into might is right and, and selfishness and self-centeredness. It's a nightmare. So we have, on one side, we have hell, and the other side, we have an amazing heaven. But the choice is ours. We have to, and we have the roadmap, we have the framework, we have the SDGs that can put us in the right direction. Over to you, Riz.
Brilliant. I love every word what you just said. And I think, I believe and resonating with you, men have been very primitive throughout the history. Women and men were created for each other. They complement each other. And when they complement each other, a great thing happens. And, if you look at from a scientific and technical perspective, that phrase that behind every great man is a woman. Either it's a king, it's a leader, it's a politician, it's a businessman, it's a scientist. There's always a genius or a smart woman brain behind them, and they both complement each other. Just because men are physically stronger than women, they try to overpower them. But perhaps sometimes I think men are scared of women because they're more smarter, they're more reliable. And you were right in explaining in the scientific method as well, because even one of those these scientific things explained in a joke form as well, that when men and women are having an argument, woman is constantly thinking of questions. She's throwing questions at the guy, and the guy is just trying to deflect them. So coming back to the topic, it's both genders. They are made for each other. They are nothing without each other. And imagine. It's in some certain cases, it's more than 50% of the population are ladies. The woman is, a boy's first school is a woman. That's her first school. So, why are they left behind? Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Adam, with one of a very interesting question. I think you know what I'm talking about. But I want to go to Sylvian now. Sylvian, I want to ask you a detailed question. I know you have been, extensively involved in a lot of work around technology with regards to a lot of development projects which are sustainable. So, I understand you've worked in smart cities, smart grid, or sometimes say it's more of a smart society than rather than a smart city. So, why you're in Oman journey and what's the team about? And tell us about your projects which you have been doing in different parts of the world, which are into development, and also they relate very well and resonates very well with the Sustainable Development Goals.
First of all, I thank you, Adams, for your wonderful speech, and I don't think, by the way, that women are less stronger than men. I am not sure that a man can deliver a baby. His heart will never stay on. He will die.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that in a way we are less big. I am less than 5 feet, so I know perfectly what I say. But I can go on forever. I cannot sleep. I can, and I don't think that women are not stronger. They are differently stronger, but they are stronger.
Absolutely.
as strong as men. I don't like to say it depends of what man and what woman, of course. But also, Adam, I agree with you that food is very important. If people has no food, they have no head. Also, they cannot think. So it's very this food consideration is very important in the world. Alors, you want me to talk about how I think is a smart city was a smart society. That's it, Riz? Alors, first of all, I think that smart is not right word. It's sustainable. I think it's more important than smart, and it's all about well-being of the citizens that includes a society. We cannot become smart without the assistance of people, and the leader cannot go from the head to down to say, voila, this is a smart city. I am taking all these tools and I make a smart city. This is not real. First of all, we need smart politicians. This is the most difficult right now. If you look at our politicians all over the world, we cannot be very happy about that. And I think that if we have just politicians who are just fighting together to get at the head of the politic and to be leaders, we are lost. And we have to make the politician understand that they are at our service. It's not us who are at the service of the politicians. And the politicians should understand that the most important is to think about the citizens. A lot of failure that I have seen in the so-called smart cities or smart areas is because people have technology in mind, and this is soulless. So for me, this is not smart, this is stupid. So a city which is just full of IoT is a stupid city. A city which is thinking about the citizens and built all its strategy with the citizens, it's clever and it's smart. So it's important to use the intelligence and the know-how of collective, including the one who are left behind. Because very often in a smart city, you use what you call the smart people with PhD and so on, and who are very often very dumb too, because they have done one area in their life and that's it. And they don't create, they don't think about the left behind, they don't think about the basic things. And where I agree with Nolwenn that you don't need a very high tech sometimes. Sometimes with little tools, what technological tools, of course, you can do a lot. And using backbones, using what's there, and voila. So a smart city or a smart society is creating, not starting from the top of the pyramid to the down, but from the down to the top, on my point of view. And all the success I have seen is when you put together identifying the relevant actors that can be men, women, even children. Some children are very smart and they understand very well the situation. Some left behind in the poor areas that they have ideas, and if you involve them in ideas, what I have done in different cities, then you get less struggle in this city, because the young people feel that they are considered, that they are not just left behind. So the idea is to help people to live an easier, more connected, greener, more sustainable, I will say life without to help and to forget to help to find solution on the aspect of climate action. Whatever we do now, we can think about climate, about inequalities. Whatever we do, we can think about inequalities. Are these solutions you helping with inequalities or no? Gender issues and peace. Because if we have no peace, if we have just guns, if you have just people fighting, nothing can happen. So I think that the smart society combine the dream and the reason. We should both be idealistic and also economically viable, because if we are not economically viable because we are thinking about big huge projects and so on, we cannot do anything. So we should do pragmatic dreamers. I suppose that SDG is a goal of pragmatic dreamers, both concerned about our social responsibility. We all have a social responsibility, and very realistic about the financial imperatives. Don't put people in, like, for example, les Jeux Olympiques, Olympic Games, which at my point of view, it's heretic right now. It's completely stupid to put so much money for a stadium who will be used one or twice, maybe in 50 years or in 20 years, or to put money in stupid things when you have people behind the walls who are eating not enough, or who are, I think it's completely crazy. Did I answer to your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sylvian. Okay, I think this session is so immersive, and it's getting so interesting, and there's so much I want to talk about. I feel like we should talk all night, but I also understand that people will get bored if they start listening to a session for hours. So we also need to control them and keep the interest alive. And definitely this theme will have multi-parts. So we have about 10 to 12 minutes left. So for this part, I've changed the questions. So I would straight go to the concluding questions for each of you, and that will give us the framework for our part 2 session after a few days. So I want to go first to Adam, and also I would ask all of us to also relate to the question I'm going to ask Adam, because I think that is one of the most pressing issues which the world is facing now. So Adam, I think you know my question. I think isn't the pandemic has been an accelerator for technology? And yesterday we were chatting, and you said you put it really brilliantly that if it was 2030, pandemic would have happened, or vice versa. So how tech in communication relates to how humans and the world have been dealing with the pandemic. Please tell us about your thoughts.
Adam.
We don't always need high tech. If we're dealing with the pandemic, the mask, the proper, N95 or the KN95, it is enough would have stopped the pandemic in most places of the world. But what the pandemic has done is exposed inequalities, and it's exposed, those who are poor, who are living crowded into apartments, can't social distance. Those who, don't have internet access, even in the rich countries of the world, in the United States, there's a deep digital divide, often based on color. People of color, but also, poor white families, and those schools that could give out laptops to kids who didn't have them, could continue to take schooling. But then their parents can't pay for internet access. And so a lot of people were left out of the pandemic reality, the pandemic economy. Those of us with the ability can open up our laptop and can Zoom to the office. You know, I'm working in Ukraine every day, supporting their COVID-19 response and the capacity of the office. But I'm doing it from New York and Washington, D.C. and Connecticut, from the eastern seaboard of the United States. And so the technology has been pushed forward where conferences where they were going to fly people around, so on the good side, the 80% is often this Pareto principle, the 80 and the 20. Some UN conferences have been held online. And that's a good thing because we didn't all need to fly around the world burning fossil fuels and with our carbon footprint to look at one another like this. And then, enjoy being in Rome or being in Paris. It was a great thing for those of us. I went to over 100 countries in 25 years with the UN. And I was able to expand my inner horizons and outer horizons. But, we don't all, so in that sense, the technology, being able to bring people together through virtual, but those who cannot do that, so we need to reach out and find that reality. But let me talk about one of the big problems in the world is this thing about us and them. There is no us and them. We always think men and women, us and them, rich and poor, us and them, white and black, us and them. That's one of the big problems that's one of the delusions that's created so many problems in this world. Because when you go to the moon and you look back at the earth, there's only us. 8 billion of us on a warm rock spinning through cold space, trying to figure things out. But the first thing we have to figure out is that there's only us. We need to take care of us. This whole thing with a mask in my own country, when you look at, if the SDGs were achieved, what I talk about, we probably wouldn't have the pandemic or it wouldn't have gotten as bad as it is. And I'm not talking about economic development. The US is one of the richest countries in the world, and it's the country with the worst problem. It's 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the cases of corona and 25% of the deaths and all that. Now, why? It's probably because of this selfish, self-centered attitude. The mask, people think, well, I don't need to wear a mask because, or it's not efficient because, I won't get it or I'll stay away with this or that. The mask is to protect other people, not to protect yourself. And so there's all this argument going on where, it's not effective, the mask, if I wear a cloth or this or that, or I cover my mouth, because I won't get it. Everybody's thinking they won't get it. But the idea is that you have within 2 weeks, you can get it and you don't even know, and you can pass it on to your grandparents. You can pass it on. We need to start thinking about others as we think about ourselves, because society, we need to think and reach and connect care about others as much or more than we care about ourselves. And then these issues will move forward. Technology or no technology. Technology in the hands of people who don't care about others can be very dangerous. But technology in the hands of people who connect and care about others can be very powerful and can help others. And that's the thing. We need to stop thinking about others as being them and think of others as being us. There we go. That's my last word.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I want to have a separate session, an individual session with each of you. It's so many new things are coming up, and I love it. Okay, so Nolwenn, I'm quickly coming to you. I also want you to talk about past and post-COVID in relation with how tech and the society is dealing with the pandemic, in relation with your project on open diplomacy.
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate to have the possibility to talk about that because I'm going to write an article about that. So don't worry. I will share some information already with you. So it is before I write the article, so it is a privilege for you, I think. So what has happened with the COVID-19, it is highlight two things, I think. The first, it is, yes, it is a pandemic, it is a sanitary crisis, but it was not a technological crisis. Our structure and our whole infrastructure are enormous robust, and we have no internet crisis all the time. Everybody work at home, and there's something. It's not perfect, it's true, but if you add internet crisis, it will be more critical than what we are going to live. So that is something. And the other thing which happened with this COVID-19 situations, what it is highlight, it is a huge difference between countries, not only in terms of sanitary, but also in terms of internet access. we have to keep in our mind that 48% of people, world population don't have internet access. So when we speak about data, when we speak about digital world, we speak to only 52% of the world population. So we have to keep that in our mind because it changes our mindset. So that it is something. And to conclude, but before to conclude, we said thank you, Adam, for your passion. It's just so amazing, and actually exactly not all of that, because women are not more stronger than men. We are different. It's not the same thing and not the same approach of the life. So, but I am completely agree with plenty things, and especially about animals and our biodiversity. Sylvian, I really appreciate what you said. It's just amazing. I'm sorry to say that, however, I love sport, and there's so many innovation, technological innovation with sports, and behind sports there's many things around values and to work together and very collaboratively, something like that. So personally, I clearly understand what is happened behind the Olympic Games, because it is a huge aspect, and it is to explain also to each of us across the world, even if what is happened, political aspect, the sports can be an area where there is no tensions. So for me, I can understand people don't understand we put so many money on that, but I practice sport at national level, and I can see the power of this approach. And if people practice sport more, probably our health will be better. So that it is another thing, and because we know that it is an impact in our brain. So I think to people who are so stressed, check your shoes, go to run, and you see probably you will be more happy and more fun on your life. So to conclude, what I would like to say, it is, me is not a gender, is not sexual orientation, just we should accept all people, accept the diversity of our profiles. So whatever your gender, whatever your sexual orientation, whatever your color, whatever your religions, should accept who you are, because we learn so much in our difference. And what is the difference today? It is only one thing. It is our neuronal connections, only that. Because we have a brain, all of us, and we have a earth. So, and my concern today with the situation, and that's why I really appreciate you give me the opportunity to speak up. It is today we manage people and citizens by fear. Fear management, fear. Be afraid, but be afraid about what? To live? So I'm sorry to say that, but please, people, try to live your life, because the life is so short and it is so beautiful, our nature and our citizen and our difference. So stop to believe that it is a nightmare. The life is not the case. It's just a beautiful time. So that it is only I would like to mention. So enjoy your day, enjoy your life all the time, your family, your friends, all difference, because that for me, it is a reality and it is a humanity.
Wow, thank you so much. I think one point we all agree, and I'm very happy that we all are on the same page. That men and women are equal in capabilities, in rights, in intellect, intelligence, skills, and I stand corrected. Sylvian, you were right. Actually, I'll rephrase. So what I meant was, just because in the size, men are bigger, so they think they're more powerful. But you're so right. If even I think 10% of the pain of giving birth, men wouldn't be able to stand. We'll die. And again, I know many of my male friends don't like me saying that. Women are more smarter and more reliable, and I rather have a woman boss than a man. So, Sylvian, two questions in one question, but and then we wrap up the session, and then we'll wait for part two. Explain your point of view and your vision that how pandemic has affected the world and how we've been dealing with it and how we should be dealing it in retrospective of technology and also bringing in your, I would say, command on the smart aspect of the tech side, like smart cities, smart grid, or smart society. So it's like a 3-in-1 question. So, but in relation with COVID-19.
I can for example, give you an example. There is a startup in Nantes, in France, which had a very good idea about doing respirator at less than 1,000 euro or dollar, which is nothing in comparison. So I helped to put the consortium together, and we were 125, even more, between startup and big companies, including Renault and another big company. And in 2 months, networking, putting engineers, thinking process, and so on, they arrived to deliver this respirator at less than 1,000 euro. And that could help a lot if there is another pandemic, and we need. And you know who had the idea of making it not too expensive? They put a motor of Vespa. And the Vespa,
wow.
and it works very well. And so all together, putting all their knowledge and their thinking process and working together, they arrived to the fact that we should make not too much, should not be expensive, should be simple. So let's try with a Vespa motor, and it works very well. So this is an example of thing that could be done and has been done. People are all connected, but my point of view when I see how France is now after the confinement, the deconfinement, is that a lot of people who were thinking before, during the confinement, now a lot are forgetting we were confined. They think that everything is over, and they don't change too much their mind. The mind should change, absolutely. And if you look at the country, this is to go to Norway, if you look at the country who were the best with the COVID, it's Germany, where it was a woman at the head of, you have 4 countries where the women were at the head, and because they think like it was their home, and they don't think about huge project and so on. They think about how to do it properly, but simply. And I think that with the COVID, we may think smaller, that will be good. And we may think more efficient. If people think, continue to think. I think that some people were revealed by that. Some other, they would go back to the same stupid things. That's my point of view. But I am optimistic. In '68 we had a pandemic that made the Hong Kong pandemic. Nobody talked about that. I was there in '68. I don't remember. Nobody talked about that. And why we never? And we had 30,000 people died in France. So the same more or less than with the COVID. And why? Because the media were asked by De Gaulle to shut up, because he said we have enough problem with the 68 people, now you shut up. So it's true also that the news are so different, the media are so different, that it's very complicated to understand what is true, what is not true, what is very different than before, what is the same. It's very complicated. Voilà.
Brilliant. Okay, I think I've already got the gist of how our part two will look like. I'll make my closing remarks with 3 points I take from Sylvian. I personally feel, I think she mentioned that, a lot of problems and let's say diseases or pandemics, she gave an example of France and there are others as well, nobody talks about. I personally feel that since this pandemic has been a common enemy of the human, so now it's a poor man or a rich man or a powerful country or a weak country, since it's a common enemy, suddenly we all are humans and we have become more connected and all for one and one for all. Imagine if this, God forbid, pandemic was only in Africa. I doubt West or US would care. So, my point is that, as human beings, we have become selfish. We are selfish. But the moment it's a negative side and a positive side, that a common enemy or a common goal can unite us together. But the point is that we don't need a common goal, or perhaps we need a common goal to unite. So SDGs are common goals. They're going to create balance and they're going to create prosperity and harmony among the world. So, if a disease can be a common goal and common enemy to unite all of us, why not the better things which can make life easier for all of us can be a common goal for all of us? And she mentioned about, I think that is the right example, and I'm going to use in all of my sessions, why women are better in management and why they're more smart and responsible. Because woman is a mother who runs the house. So in my opinion, a household is the micro example of an organization. Mother is the first school, she's running the house, and if you go to east or west, traditionally, men always give money in the hands of a woman. Okay, you run the house. She's the finance minister. So if that's the evolution or that's the fundamental, so it can be replicated, why not in our social lives and businesses and organizations, and as Adam also said, in parliaments, in boards and everything. Why can't we have, if there's a marketing department, there should be 5 guys and 5 women. Why can't we things like that? So again, I think I'll cut the story short. We all agree on these points, and for the part 2, I think we will have I would like to discuss things on very specifics, that how governments and how the private sector is coming along down to the actionable details, how it's affecting or how it has become the part of the policy. Because unless SDGs are part of the official policies, either public or private sector, the impact would not be there. It'll be just marketing and PR. And also, I would like to talk about children. I wanted to ask that question from Sylvian because she has been doing really noble and amazing work for children, for the well-being, to give them opportunities where they can excel with humble backgrounds. But we're going to talk about in part 2. So I would really like to express my gratitude to all of my tech time travelers who were stopping at Bond Space Station. So till then, we continue our travel in the time in the US, in Europe, and in Africa. And see you all very soon. Thank you so much. I'm signing off from Johannesburg, South Africa. So ciao and take care of yourselves. Be safe. Wear the mask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Ciao, Adam. Ciao, Nolwenn.
Salut Sylviane. Ciao. Adam. Bye.